Happy New Year. We're glad to be back with you. This is going to be part of a 4-week series. It's called Create to Love. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about our relationships and what makes for good and healthy relationships, how our relationship with God impacts our relationship with each other, and we're going to talk about safety in relationships and boundaries in relationships. That's what we're going to be covering here. This will be dealing with friendships as well as love and dating relationships and even married relationships. So we're going to do this a little differently than we've done throughout the fall. We're going to have a teaching at the very beginning. That's me. We'll stop at a couple points and invite you to have discussions. But throughout all that, then at the very end of that, there will still be other materials left on the website, a worksheet, or something else for you guys to process through. Just so you know, that's where we're going here. Okay? So we're going to talk about relationships. And if we're going to talk about relationships, let's start at the very, very beginning. God had a plan for relationships. God had a design for relationships. So if you have a Bible or if you have a guess, what do you think God says about relationships? What do you think God's design is for relationships? Okay? And what do you think the Bible says about relationships? So here comes our first pause. We're going to pause, have a quick conversation. What's God's plan for relationships? I'm going to give you my best guess on God's plan for relationships. And it really does go, I hinted towards it earlier, it does go back to the very beginning, the very start of the Bible. So the Bible is, of course, broken up into two different sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament goes from the very beginning up until the time of Christ. And then the New Testament has 4 Gospels, which talk about Jesus, and then a bunch of letters of talking about the early church and how the early church was interacting. And that's the New Testament. The very beginning of the Old Testament starts off with a book called Genesis. And if I had to ask you to tell me what the book of Genesis is about, how did the world start? How did God create the world? Your answer would be, check in real quick. What's your answer? Now, a fair amount of you may have suggested the story of Adam and Eve, and that's a good answer. And you're right, kinda. The book of Genesis is broken up into many different chapters, and the story of Adam and Eve is actually the second story of creation. It's the second story of creation. There's a first story of creation too. So for those of you who might have said that God made the world in 7 days, well, that's actually the first story. And we're going to take a look at that first story as well. And that's where we're going to start off with, that first story. God took a look at the world, and God made the world in 7 days or 6 days. We'll break it up in here, okay? And so here we go. The very beginning of the Bible, if you check it out, it starts off, in the beginning. And it says, God created the heavens and the earth was without form, without shape. And it was darkness all over the place, and there was a mighty wind sweeping. And then God said, you've heard this line. God said, let there be light. And because God said, there was light. And God saw the light was good. The light was good. God then separated the light from the darkness, and God called the light day and the darkness night. Evening came, morning followed, the first day. God makes light, the light's good. Then God said, let there be a dome over the middle of the waters, and will separate one body of water from the other. And God made the dome, and it separated the water from below the dome from the water above. So there's water on the ground, lakes, oceans, okay? And then there's water up in the sky, rain, snow, ice, okay? And it separated it all, and so it happened, and God called the dome sky. And then evening came, morning followed, the second day. Okay? Third day, God said, let the water under the sky be gathered in a single basin, so that dry land may appear. And so it happened. The water of the sky was gathered into a basin, ocean, and then land appeared where there was an ocean. And God called the land earth, and the basin of water he called sea. And then God saw that it was good. God said, let the earth bring forth vegetation, every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree on earth that bears and has seed in it. And so it happened. And the earth brought forth vegetation, every kind of plant with every kind of seed, and every kind of fruit tree that bears fruit had seed in it. And God saw it was good. Evening came, morning followed, the third day. God's making stuff, and God's seeing it. It's good. So God set them in the dome of the sky to illuminate the earth, to govern the day and the night, to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw it was good. Evening came, morning followed, the fourth day. Then God said, let the water teem with abundance of living creatures, and let the earth let birds fly beneath the dome of the sky. God created great sea monsters and all sorts of crawling living creatures. And a couple of variations of the Bible, those crawling living creatures were called creepy things. Different language. Those creepy things were in the water that teems, and there was all kind of winged birds, and God saw it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fertile, multiply, fill the water of the sea, and let the birds multiply in the earth. Evening came, morning followed, the fifth day. Pay attention now, because here we come to day 6. It's a game changer. It's a big game changer. God said, let the earth bring forth every kind of living creature, tame animals, crawling things, every kind of wild animal. So it happened. God made every kind of wild animal and every kind of tame animal and every kind of thing that crawls on the ground. God saw that it was good. Then God said, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, God said, let us make human beings in our own image, after our own likeness. Okay, now we're going to stop. God said, let's make human beings in our own image and our own likeness. And this is my favorite question to ask. For you, what do you think that means? What does it mean that we're created in God's image and likeness? God created mankind in God's image. In the image of God, God created them. Male and female, God created them. There's a difference here between the chapter 1 creation 6 days story and the Adam and Eve story in chapter 2. Okay? In Adam and Eve, sorry, I got papers dropped over here. In Adam and Eve, we have the story of man being created first and then woman. Second story. First story, God creates them at the same time. God created people in God's own image, an image likeness of God. God created them, male and female. God created them, same time. Okay, so you could take a whole bunch of different variation takes between chapter 1, creation of 6 days, and chapter 2, Adam and Eve, and say, well, God made man first, and then females came along. It doesn't make, in chapter 1, creation, God made human beings together and didn't separatize or prioritize or anything else between men and women. Made them together equally at the same time. Okay? So that's an important connection there. On top of that, God takes a look at all creation and it says, I give you every seed bearing plant, I give you every tree, I give you all the birds, I give you all the fish, I give you the wild animals, I give you the tame animals, name them, deal with them, take care of them, be stewards and responsible for them. God gives it all to human beings, humanity. God gives it all to humanity and says, take care of this. And at the end of the day, God takes a look around and says, this is very good. This is very good. So here's a big question. What do you think that means? Day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, God takes a look around. Good, 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 good. But day 6, God makes human beings very good. Muy bueno. What's that mean to you? Talk about that, please. I don't know what your answers were, but I've asked this question a bunch, and I have a rough guess as to what some of the answers might be. But they're related to the last 2 questions I asked. What does it mean to be created in God's own image and likeness? And what does it mean that we're created very good? See, I think to be created in God's own image and likeness means that there is something God-ish, God-like in you and me. I think, and some people may call that soul. Some people, I don't know. But there's something God-ish, okay? And we're different than the rest of creation. God has something of God's own self in the image and likeness. Does that mean God's got eyes and ears and mouth and hands? I don't think so. I think it's deeper than that. I think it's deeper than that. Okay? And we know we can look around creation. We can look around all humanity, and we come in a wide variety of shapes and colors and abilities and languages and disabilities. We have a whole wide variety of things about us, but the thing that we have in common is that we got God stuff. That's my take on it. I want you to consider that. But if you consider that, and that's what makes us very good, that's what makes us very good. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, dome, birds, water, sun, light, moon, darkness, all that kind of stuff. Good, 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 good. But we're very good. I think we're kind of like God's best work. In terms of an artist, God's best work is a masterpiece. I think because we're God's best work, God's very good work, I think therefore then that we've got the best that God has made and God has offered. And so we have to live up to that for ourselves. But then in relationships, you got to start to recognize that no matter what the other person is like or who they are, they also, the other person that you're encountering, whether it's the person who's annoying in your Zoom class, or whether it's the little brother, sibling, or cousin, or that are just rough to deal with, challenging to deal with. Whether it's your own bad mood, but whatever is going on, that person's still created in God's image and likeness, and so it becomes my job, or it becomes your job in any relationship, to look into that other person and look deeply into the other person and say, what is it about this person? What is it I can learn from this person that gives me a hint to what God is like? That person is born and given to us in God's image and likeness. So can I see in that other person the generosity of God's Spirit? Can I see in that other person the perseverance of God's care and love for us? Can I see in that other person the creativity of a God who's creator? What is it I can see in the other person? That's the important thing. That's how God created us. Image, likeness of God, very best creation. But he didn't only create us like, he created every human being like that. And we got to stop thinking just inside ourselves, but looking inside other people as well, to consider their image and their likeness. I got an activity which is going to be laid out in the papers that are coming up next on the website and in the newsletter. So take a look at this activity about how we interact with one another. Okay? Good luck.